Hey, hi, howdy. Welcome to part 2 of Civil War. How we did it, a little bit of a deep dive on the project itself. Part 1, if you missed it, we covered where the project came from, a little bit about composition and some resources for that and how it kind of all came together physically. And then just kind of where some of the materials came from. I did miss a few of the materials, like the plinth and just kind of some of my construction materials, and I'll probably have a more general video for that later, but I do want to kind of go over just a few of the things that I used if anybody's interested. So we're going to get into that. We are going to talk about the paint and a little bit of concept of color theory and just physically what paints I use for pretty much everything I should be able to share with you guys. We're going to talk about the background, we're going to talk about the nameplate, and we're going to kind of talk about how that all went, and then we're going to talk about the competition and how that went, and kind of my thoughts on maybe a little bit of competition in general and painting. And yeah, so like and subscribe, and if you have any questions or I missed anything or you're wondering why anything is the way that it is, please make sure you leave a comment, and let's get into it. Part 2. Now, just to give you guys some of the material use, if you are interested. So for putting the models together, I swore it off for years and years, but plastic glue, specifically the Tamiya Extra Thin, has been like the best addition to my, definitely the building part of the hobby in like a long time. And I don't know where it's at, but I did recently make some sprue glue as well. So basically what you do is you take like a half full one, you throw a bunch of sprues in it, it'll gunk it up. And if you're not familiar with the plastic glue, it melts it together. So like your seams are way better. And recently I just built Angron here, using it a lot, and I don't know how much you'll see this on the recording, but all of these, the talons on the end are separate pieces, but with the plastic glue you get a really nice bond, and I'll still probably go in there and get a little bit more fixing on these, but just by squeezing it together and the melted part kind of oozing out between the gap, you're gonna get like a much better build than just using super glue. I still do use super glue very often, and I preferred this super glue for a long time because, again, you kind of, when you squeeze the pieces together, you get a little bit of overfill, and then you just take your knife blade and kind of come in and clean that, and you're gonna get a much better seam on your gaps. So for glue, for filling in the sides, and if you remember in the first video, and I'll put the picture on screen now, the cars are hollow, so I filled them with just aluminum foil, and then I believe I was using the silver gray, it might have been the normal, and to be honest with you, with the milliput, I have no idea what the difference is between any of them. Like I have all of them, I have no idea. I'm sure somebody does, obviously, and I'm sure that there's a video out there that will explain that, but for me, I just have no damn clue. So the sides, then after I filled them, I used sanding paper to get a flat surface. So kind of just going through grits, starting with like a, you know, pretty, it says extra fine, but like 220 is rough. 220 is like rough for miniatures. So that gave me a pretty general, then moving on to the 600, and the 1000 is like, it's smooth, it's pretty smooth to touch. I mean, you can still feel the grit on there, but that will give you an incredibly smooth surface to work with. The flag is... the flag, originally what I did was take pieces of plastic card and build kind of this raft with them, where you have a piece on either side and then the fill in the middle, and that way if you roll it through there, ideally you're going to get a perfectly even piece of putty in between. The green stuff that I was using was old and not good, and I kept getting like chunks in here, and you can kind of see, and this is also because I was using like the textured plastic card, which is not a good idea, but this was a original iteration, and I think just too thick. And I had multiple people kind of comment as I was working through the process and say, you know, the flag is just a little too thick. So I wound up just using these really thin sheets of, I think it's aluminum. I got it years ago for punching out little ferns, but it's like the perfect thing for flags, and I actually am going to put a flag on an upcoming project, so I'm like really glad that I learned that here and then can apply it further down the line. So the sand on the back and the rocks and rubble are just mostly just it's playground sand, and then it's rocks. And then the bricks are, and I don't know what company makes these, there's probably a ton if you just Google or go on eBay. Just little bricks, just kind of chop them up and kind of place them wherever. And obviously I use the bricks in accordance with the building that's kind of smashed right behind it, just to give a little bit more cohesion between the world and the world that we're building in the foreground and the world that we're building in the background. So, and then the plinth itself is from Taro Model Maker, and if you're not familiar with his work, James Taro, awesome dude. Actually, one of my favorite moments at Adepticon was watching him win 2 Golden Demons, because the dude was just like ecstatic, and it was just great to see somebody, you know, be so happy. But just a couple other examples of his work. This is quite a bit bigger of these background style plinths. And then this is just one of the circle ones. So all resin, really nice finish on these. I don't know how he does it, to be honest. I don't know what material you put over the resin or if it's a lacquer or what the deal is. But definitely go check him out. I'll put the link below. I've actually got to put an order in with him for all of my future stuff. So proven to be pretty great product from this gentleman out of England, but definitely worth the money. So I think that pretty much covers all the physical elements. So let's move on to the paint. Now paint. So kind of just to give you a general gist of my normal approach with painting. Normally what I like to do is pick a universal shade color. And in recent years, because of both the potency, the consistency, and the vibrancy that you get in just clear readability from them, the Chimera paints have become like a huge staple for me. If you look on this troll guy that I just painted, the universal shade is there's a blue and a purple, right? So, but it's kind of a mix, but it's the violet. So it just makes things a little easier for me to say, like, the environment is somewhat purple. That's kind of the universal shade. So it's going to unify everything and bring it together. Normally, that's what I do. Civil War was a little bit different because I had an environment that was not going to be colored. I'm not painting a super fantastical piece because they're set in the city, because it's supposed to be true New York and it's supposed to be in the middle of a battle. A lot of neutral colors in our environment. So I didn't want to do that super fantastical environmental color. I did have the idea early on that if I was going to do it, it would be the violet, because if I've got blue on Cap and I've got red on Iron Man, then I can meet them in the middle and have the shade work for both colors. I did compromise a little bit with that by using, there's 2 phthalo blues in the original Chimera set, and there's one that's a red shade that does lean a little bit more purple. And the other one is a green shade that leans a little bit more yellow, or green. So Cap, and I took the airbrush, and I'll show you some pictures here. So I took the airbrush and I did the phthalo green, and then I moved up with the Signar Blue highlight, and then the last color was this Aquarius Azure from the Zodiac Kickstarter. And I don't know if they have these for sale normal or not, but it was from the Zodiac Kickstarter from Scale 75. I thought this was a really pretty blue. Now, I applied them kind of in third layers. So I have the bottom third of him really with the coldest and the deepest blue, and then moving up the layering through the kind of shifting colors here. So again, normally my models in recent years, I'm trying to focus saturation, I'm trying to focus attention towards the character, towards the face of the model, which is why the brightest colors, the highest highlights, they should be focused on the models. I will say in retrospect, when you're working with a bigger piece like this, I think you can go a little bit more full model on them, because you're not just working with a single dude, you're working with multiple characters inside a scene. So I think if I had pushed them both a little bit more throughout the entire model instead of doing my normal kind of third thing, I think that it would have worked even better. And I did get a comment from the head judge about Cap's pants being a little bit dull compared to what's going on up here. Now, I did want to make a differentiation between the materials, being that the pants and that kind of his cowl are different than the scale mail. And the scale mail is like the coolest thing ever. I think it is like one of the most badass superhero outfits ever. So being able to do that was like a dream come true. And again, I wish I had just had more time, because I did this in about a month, and that is way faster than I normally like to work. If you look at something like my Worm Spat or my Gore Chosen that I did last year, I spent 3 months on each of those. So it's a month a model, basically. And this was 2 models, half of a car, the background, like everything in a month. So a lot faster than I like to work. Obviously, I'm very happy with it, but just to give you some insight into that, a little bit quicker than I like to be. So Iron Man, kind of similar thing, where I used Deep Red from Scale 75, Blood Red, and Aldebaran Red. I did come to regret this and wound up doing a little bit of a change later where I used the Red from Chimera, which is just like such a kick-ass potent color, to be kind of the main focus. I played around with him a little bit, and I tried Orange Red from Model Color as a highlight, and I didn't really like it. So I wound up going with Mars Orange and the Ice Yellow from Model Color, and I thought that worked out quite a bit better. And there are parts of him where he goes all the way up to white, same as Captain America, where on the scale mail it goes all the way to white. And I should say on Cap as well, the highlight color after the Aquarius Azure is this Ghost Gray. This is a huge staple in my painting. I use this as a universal highlight all the time, kind of in tandem then with the Ice Yellow. It's an off-white that has a little bit of blue in it, so your kind of sky reflection works really well, and it works super well for metallics obviously then too if you're going up, if you're anything facing the sky, so you can get that little bit of blue in there. And Ice Yellow, again, sun reflections, you get that little bit of a hint of yellow, and you can just add a dash, and I think it works really, really well for a lot of things. So the glow on Iron Man, I wound up using Warm Yellow from Scale 75. And that is mostly white with additions of glazing the yellow. The gold on him is from Robert Carlson's Dark Fantasy Tales, Fairy Tales, and I will not give away the secret because I think this is a fantastic set. I think these are beautiful, beautiful colors. And I'm so looking forward to doing a project with just these focus. But he's got a gold recipe in here, and I used it on the skink that I had just done before these guys, and I wanted to use it on Iron Man as well. And I think it is just a beautiful, beautiful combination of colors, and it's rich, and it's warm, and it's vibrant, and I thought it worked pretty well here. So that is where that came from. Now on the cars here, the one on the right is a mix of Boreal Tree Green and Sombre Gray from Game Color. And I wanted to make it a pretty desaturated green to kind of enhance Iron Man a little bit. I didn't want to make it just so obviously like potently green. And again, want to focus our saturation on our characters, on the focus of our storytelling. So by taking a green and desaturating it with a gray, I felt that worked pretty well. Again, highlights on that with a Ghost Gray. The black car, just Ghost Gray with black. And I got, of course, this is like Matt DiPietro, like pushing me in the right direction. Coming back in and using a black ink. Now with the blacks, a matte black will not read as black as a gloss black and a gloss. And this is the glossiest black that I have. Inks are usually have pretty glossy finish. So coming back in with that, kind of near the final stages of the project, that just like kicked it up, and I thought just made it so much better than it was looking. So if you're doing black armor or anything, whether it's a full glaze over everything, which is dangerous when you get up to like white highlights on black armor, you don't want to ruin them. But definitely in your shadows, getting that gloss black in there, it works so well. So, now for the whites on Cap, and that'll be on the shield. Brown gray up to Ghost Gray, and a little bit of white on there. Same thing, these three on the flag as well, same stuff as Iron Man, Blood Red and the Aldebaran Red, and then on the blues it is the Signar Blue, just kicked up a little bit into the Signar Blue highlight. So Reds on cat, Doombull brown into blood red, and I did want to make them read a little bit like leather because I don't really think like a big latex glove makes any sense. I think that the leather makes a little bit more sense. There's a little bit of texturing on there. Same stuff with the shield, but that I kicked all the way up to the Albert Arn, and then a little bit of the red, again, kind of glazed in. And I think that's pretty much it on most of the colors. Oh, the window shields. The wind shields are important. The wind shields. Adriatic blue is the main focus of the wind shields. This comes... The reason I have it is it came in a scale 75 non-metallic metal set and is meant to, I believe, replicate the color of the sky. And I didn't want to do... Obviously you can't... You can, but painting a clear window shield was going to be an incredibly difficult thing. So using this, desaturating it, or pulling it down a little bit with some blues, painting in Cap's reflection just very generically, and then coming in with highlights with both white and our ghost gray for the windshield cracks, and kind of doing the spidering on there. I think it worked out incredibly well. So that's kind of the process there. The background is a lot of the same colors that were the neutrals in the foreground, the brown gray, the Doombull brown, and just kind of mixing them together to create neutrals. Because again, I don't want anything super saturated in the background. We've got the fire behind Iron Man that's got a little bit of saturation, but for the most part, we're working with like pretty desaturated stuff back there because I want to push the scene forward. I want to keep that focus on the characters. I want to keep reiterating that idea in every level and aspect that I can. And again, we talk about, you know, those saturated colors. The only other place between them is here. So if I'm telling you that you should be looking here and you should be looking here, this is where the story's happening, right? So think about that when you're doing your scenes. Now, two quick things that I did miss in the actual recordings. I wanted to share with you guys some of these colors that I used for Cap's skin. Now the tan flesh from Pro Acrylic here was the base coat, with the warm flesh being the main highlight. I did use some of the ice yellow as well as some pure white on his face. And there's maybe a little bit of blue in the shadows, which is kind of a twofold thing with this thirding thing that I talk about. But the reason I know the third thing is it was an application from a Renaissance style face painting where the bottom third of the face is kind of blue, especially in the jawline for men, where you kind of have the stubble growing in. The middle of the face being very red in the cheeks and the nose area, and then the top of the face being very yellow. So kind of using that application, but also the Cap's suit being blue there, you're going to get a little bit of maybe a pickup on a blue reflection. The sky blue here was something I totally missed that was definitely used in Cap's suit. And I really, really love these Pro Acryls. Having used Scale 75 and having very much a love-hate relationship with them, which I will get into in a separate video. I love the mateness of the Scale 75s. The separation and the gel medium is a colossal pain in the ass, and I feel like the Pro Acryls have been really, really wonderful so far. They do separate on the palette if they sit for long enough, but it's a pretty minor complaint considering how good the coverage and everything else has been. Now the other thing, which I did promise that I would share, was how I got the cover on. Now, it is 3D printed, and it was maybe a little bit less than a week before Adepticon. Maybe it was the week of Adepticon. I had reached out on my social media and asked if anybody knew what the font was from the comic book cover. And I had a gentleman find out for me pretty immediately, and within about 10 minutes from there, he had me a 3D print file ready to go. Within 24 hours of that, I had my brother printed me up maybe 6 different sizes of the Civil War, and I got them all clipped out. I'm not normally good at these things, but actually, like, it came together really well. I think it sits on there pretty perfectly. As far as, like, I'm not good at, like, I have trouble cutting a straight line with scissors. I have trouble, like, drawing a straight line for more than, you know, a pretty small area. So I'm really, really proud of how it came out on there. And I think it just looks absolutely perfect. It adds a whole nother layer to what I was going for. And I think without it, you know, I'd originally kind of planned on stenciling it in and just printing it off and cutting it and doing it with the airbrush, and I just don't think it would have worked out nearly as well. I would have been sitting there trying to fix it a million which ways, and I think it would have ultimately looked not nearly as good. So this is definitely something I'll be using in the future. So as far as the competition goes, if you're unfamiliar, it is an open competition, which means that every individual piece is judged based on its own merit. not versus everybody else. Then in this particular competition, they go into a best of category for each of the 3 categories, being single figure, dual, and unit. And then there's an overall best in show. Now, if you hadn't seen online, I did pretty well. I was one of 2 people that took gold home, and everything that kind of went with it was this cool little patch that you got for entering, and then also this cool poster with a bunch of the villains on it, which is pretty cool. And then individual, the merit was the coins, so you can see that. It's a really cool little coin. So I did take gold home. I was really, really proud of that. I did not get best in category. If you are familiar, Mr. Johnathan Ho took home best in all the categories, as well as best in show. So congratulations to him. It was well deserved. I did pick up some of these little coin holders on Amazon, because I've got some old coins from different gaming stuff and hobby events. So that was kind of a cool thing. But I'm obviously like immensely proud, and I did get some good feedback from the judges. There was a little bit of talk about maybe that the plinth could have gone a little higher, and that the height could have extended a bit. And that I mentioned earlier, maybe cap like a little bit more, just a little bit more coloration on the bottoms of these guys, and that the arc reactor on Iron Man's chest needed some work. And I did kind of phone the explosion in at the end, because I had like very little time leading up to like when I had to turn it in, and I phoned it in and I got caught on it. So if you think you're gonna get away with things in competition, you are not. So just you know, take the time on them. And I only had X amount of time, but overall really proud of this piece. I think in retrospect, like if I had to give like my favorite thing and my least favorite thing, my favorite thing is Cap. I think he just looks like so good. You know, and the you know, delineation between like the scale mail and the armor, and I think his face came out like really great, and I'm really proud of just like every little bit of Cap. The window shield cracks are probably a close second. I know that's a lot of people really like that. So if I had to pick a least favorite thing, it's absolutely the background, and it's something I've never really done. So you know, you got to give yourself, again, like I mentioned in the first video, a little bit of leeway on these things. But I need a better plan for the next one. And again, that's what this is all about, is like you learn, you know, I learned about composition, and I learned about constructing these things, and I learned about putting a scene together, and I learned about doing the background, and I learned, you know, it's like I learned like so many things. So not only did I like take all that away from it, but I also have like just like such a badass piece that like means a lot to me too. So even if I had gotten nothing from the competition, even if I had gotten a bronze, and Golden Demon kind of went that way, it did not exactly, but you know, it's like after Golden Demon this year, a friend of mine came up and gave me a hug, and he's like, "I'm sorry, I thought you had it," and I'm like, "It's okay, like I'm not sorry, like I get to take my piece home, like nobody else has that, right?" So no matter what, if you're gonna get into this stuff, like always make sure you're doing it for yourself and not for the competition, solely for the competition. And I know I mentioned I did this because of it. Kind of as a catalyst, but you know, do your art for yourself, and I think other people will read that and feel more genuinely inspired and touched by it, because it really kind of comes more from the heart. So thanks so much for watching. If you did, if you went through both part 1 and 2, and I hope you learned something. If you did learn something, please again leave a comment below and tell me if this was helpful. If you have any feedback for the videos themselves. Obviously I'm still kind of getting into this, so thank you for being a part of that as this next kind of leg of the journey begins with the YouTube stuff. And yeah, I'm looking forward to my next thing. I think I've actually got it right here. So keep an eye out. More coming as always. And yeah, keep on painting. We'll see you next time.